There is a moment in every transformation when you become unrecognizable to those who knew you best. It happens slowly, like morning mist lifting from a lake, and then suddenly, completely, you wake up one day and realize that the person they expect you to be simply isn't there anymore. Your energy has shifted into a frequency they cannot decipher anymore, like light bending around a prism. Your consciousness has learned to refract differently through the quantum field of perception, where once your emotional responses were as predictable as sunrise. Now there exists something mysterious, something that cannot be easily read or influenced by the familiar patterns they once knew so well. This is not about becoming cold or distant. This is about becoming whole. Your nervous system has been quietly rewiring itself, creating new pathways of response that bypass the old triggers, the old wounds, the old ways of being that kept you small and knowable. Each breath you take now carries a different signature, a different frequency that resonates with something deeper, something more authentic than the adapted self you once wore like armor. Imagine, if you will, that your consciousness is like water. For years, perhaps decades, that water has been flowing through the same channels, carved deep by repeated patterns of thought, emotion, and reaction. Others learned to predict exactly where your water would flow, how it would pool, where it would rush or slow. They knew your emotional landscape like a familiar geography, but water, given time and pressure, can carve new channels. And consciousness, given awareness and intention, can flow in ways that surprise even those who thought they knew you completely. This invisible boundary you've created is not a wall, it's a frequency. It's the electromagnetic field of your heart. When it's no longer defending, no longer performing, no longer trying to be understood by minds that were never meant to comprehend the depth of your true nature. Your heart generates an electromagnetic field 50 times stronger than your brain, and this field is constantly broadcasting your emotional truth into the quantum space around you. When you were living in survival mode, when your nervous system was constantly activated by the need to please, to perform, to be acceptable, this field broadcasted a frequency of availability, of predictability, of familiar vulnerability. Others could tune into this frequency effortlessly, knowing exactly which buttons to press, which words to use, which emotional leverage would move you in the direction they desired. But healing changes everything. Healing is not just the absence of pain, it's the presence of something entirely new. It's the emergence of a self that was always there, waiting beneath the layers of conditioning, trauma, and learned behaviors. This authentic self operates on a different frequency entirely. The observer effect in quantum physics tells us that the very act of observation changes the nature of what is being observed. When you begin to witness your own patterns with compassionate awareness, when you start to observe your thoughts and emotions without being consumed by them, you literally change the quantum structure of your experience. You become the observer of your own life rather than the unconscious participant in patterns that were created long ago. And this observer, this witness consciousness, is unreadable to those who knew only your unconscious reactions, your automatic responses, your predictable emotional loops. They search for the familiar entry points into your emotional world and find ... nothing, not emptiness, but something else entirely. A presence that is full and complete unto itself, that doesn't need their validation, their approval, their understanding to exist in its own wholeness. This confuses them. They may become frustrated, accusatory, or distant. They may tell you that you've changed, that you're different, that you're not the person they fell in love with, or befriended, or grew up with. And in a way, they're absolutely right. You're not that person anymore. You're not the collection of wounds and adaptations and survival strategies that once defined your interactions. You're something more mysterious now, something that exists beyond the reach of familiar expectations. Your silence has become more powerful than your words. Your presence more impactful than your explanations. You've learned to exist in your own energetic sovereignty, creating a quantum field around yourself that naturally repels what does not serve and attracts what aligns with your highest good. This is the invisible boundary, not a fence that keeps others out, but a frequency that only allows in what resonates with your truth. It's like a tuning fork that only vibrates in harmony with certain sounds, remaining still and centered in the presence of discord. Those who can meet you in this new frequency will find themselves drawn to you in ways they cannot explain. They'll feel safe in your presence, held by your groundedness, inspired by your authenticity. They'll recognize something in you that they've been searching for in themselves. But those who knew only your adapted self, your wounded self, your reactive self, will find themselves standing at the edge of an ocean they cannot navigate. They'll reach for the familiar handles of your personality and find only smooth surfaces, like trying to grasp water with their hands. This is not cruelty. This is not punishment. This is simply the natural consequence of authentic transformation. When you heal the core wounds that once made you predictable, when you integrate the shadow aspects of yourself that you once hid, when you learn to regulate your nervous system and respond from choice rather than compulsion, you become a mystery, even to yourself. You become unreadable because you have learned to exist beyond the patterns that once defined you. You become incomprehensible because you have touched something infinite within yourself, something that cannot be contained within the small story of who you used to be. And in this mystery, in this invisible boundary, in this quantum shift of your very being, you find a peace that no external validation could ever provide. You find a wholeness that no relationship could ever complete. You find a freedom that no circumstance could ever grant. Tonight, as you rest in this knowing, allow yourself to feel the profound transformation that has occurred within you. Feel the invisible boundary that now surrounds your authentic self, protecting what is sacred, allowing in only what serves your highest good. What would it feel like to trust completely in this new frequency of your being, even if others cannot understand it? Close your eyes and feel the weight of your body settling into this moment. There is something stirring within you, something that has been waiting patiently beneath the surface of your awareness, like a seed dormant in winter soil. Tonight, you discover the profound shift that occurs when you learn to witness your own existence, deep within the intricate network of your nervous system. A quiet revolution is beginning. Your neurons are forming new pathways, creating space between stimulus and response, between trigger and reaction. This space is sacred. It is where your true power lives. Here, in this neurological pause, you become the observer of your own inner world. For so long, you have been like a leaf caught in the wind of your emotions, swept along by every feeling, every thought, every memory that surfaces. But now, something different is emerging. You are learning to watch these internal weather patterns without being consumed by them. You are becoming the sky that holds the storms, not the storm itself. This witness consciousness moves through you like morning light filtering through dense forest. It illuminates without judgment, reveals without condemnation. When anger arises, you observe it. When fear surfaces, you witness it. When old patterns of self-doubt begin their familiar dance, You watch them with the gentle curiosity of a scientist studying something fascinating and foreign. Your nervous system, that ancient network of electrical whispers and chemical conversations, begins to recalibrate. The hypervigilant pathways that once kept you scanning for danger, for rejection, for proof of your inadequacy, these pathways are softening. In their place, new neural roads are forming, carved by your growing capacity to observe without reacting, to feel without drowning. People who have known you for years begin to notice something different. You have become unreadable in the most beautiful way. Where once they could predict your responses, anticipate your reactions, even manipulate your emotions, they now encounter something mysteriously solid. You are still you, but you are no longer available for the old dances of dysfunction. This transformation creates what quantum physicists might call an observer effect within your own consciousness. Just as particles behave differently when observed, your thoughts and emotions begin to shift simply because you are watching them. The very act of witnessing changes the nature of what you witness. Your emotional responses, once automatic as breathing, now carry the spaciousness of choice. When someone attempts to trigger the old version of youth, the one who reacted from wound, who responded from fear, who made decisions from scarcity, they find instead a quantum shift has occurred. You are present, but not pulled. You are aware, but not absorbed. This isn't numbness or disconnection. This is the profound aliveness that comes from being rooted in your own center. You feel everything perhaps more deeply than ever before. You are no longer at the mercy of these feelings. You have become the loving parent to your own emotional landscape. In the quiet moments between heartbeats, you discover that you have been carrying multiple versions of why. Yourself. There is the you that reacts, the you that remembers, the you that anticipates, the you that judges. But watching them all is this observer, this witness consciousness that belongs to no particular story, no specific identity, no fixed way of being. This observer is quantum in nature. It exists in multiple states, simultaneously compassionate yet detached, engaged yet free, present yet eternal. It watches your thoughts like clouds passing through an endless sky, never identifying with any single cloud as the totality of the heavens. Your relationships begin to shift as this inner transformation ripples outward. People who are comfortable with your predictable patterns may feel unsettled by your new spaciousness. The part of you that used to absorb their anxiety, match their energy, or try to fix their problems has been replaced by something more stable, loving presence that can hold space without being consumed by it. You are becoming quantum in your responses, just as quantum particles exist in superposition until observed. You now exist in multiple possibilities until you consciously choose how to respond. The old you might have reacted from hurt. The new you considers all options in the space of a breath and chooses love, or wisdom, or simply silence. This inner observer notices the stories your mind creates, the meaning it assigns to events, the ways it tries to make sense of an essentially mysterious existence. But it doesn't believe every story. It holds them lightly, like a parent listening to a child's elaborate explanations for why the sky is blue or where dreams come from. Your nervous system, once a tangle of reactive pathways, begins to reorganize around this new center of gravity. The fight or flight responses that once dominated your inner landscape become just one voice in a much larger choir. You develop what therapists call window of tolerance, the ability to feel intensely without being overwhelmed, to experience challenge without being destabilized, People may wonder what has changed about you. You seem the same, yet fundamentally different. You're still kind, but your kindness is no longer compulsive. You're still caring, but your care no longer depletes you. You're still present, but your presence is no longer porous to others' emotional storms. This is the paradox of the observer. By stepping back from identification with your thoughts and emotions, you become more authentically yourself. By creating space between stimulus and response, you discover who you really are in that space. By refusing to be predictable, you become truly reliable, not to others' expectations, but to your own deepest truth. The quantum field responds to this shift in your consciousness. Reality itself begins to mirror your newfound stability. Chaos that once pulled you in now flows around you like water around a stone. Drama that once consumed you now feels foreign, almost incomprehensible. You have become a different frequency, broadcasting from a different station entirely. In your dreams tonight, you might find yourself standing in a vast library where every book represents a different possible response to life's challenges. You reach for the one that feels most aligned with your deepest wisdom, most connected to your authentic self. And in this choosing, you discover that you have always been the author of your own story. You simply needed to remember that you were holding the pen. Rest now in this knowing. You are the observer and the observed, the question and the answer, the seeker and the sought. What will you choose to witness in the sacred space of tomorrow's becoming? There is a moment somewhere between sleep and waking when you can feel your heart's electromagnetic field extending beyond the boundaries of your chest. Like invisible threads of light, this field reaches into the space around you 50 times more powerful than the electrical patterns dancing through your mind. Your heart, this ancient compass, is always broadcasting, always transmitting the frequency of who you are becoming tonight. As your breathing deepens and your nervous system begins to settle, imagine this field as a gentle aurora surrounding your body. Soft waves of energy that pulse with each heartbeat, carrying the signature of your emotional truth into the quantum fabric of reality. This is not metaphor, this is the electromagnetic poetry your heart writes with every beat, every breath, every moment of authentic being. When you lived from survival patterns, your heart's broadcast was chaotic, dysregulated. The field would flicker between frequencies, sometimes desperate, sometimes defended, always searching for safety in a world that felt unpredictable. Others could sense this turbulence, though they couldn't name it. Conversations felt strained. Connections required effort. You were broadcasting from a frequency of fragmentation, and the quantum field responded accordingly. But something is shifting now. As you breathe into this moment, feel how your nervous system is learning a new rhythm. The frantic signals that once kept you scanning for threats are beginning to quiet. Your heart rate variability, that delicate dance between sympathetic activation and parasympathetic rest, is finding its coherence. And with this coherence comes a profound change in your electromagnetic broadcast. This is what the ancients called alignment, what quantum physicists recognize as coherence. Your heart's field is no longer scattered across multiple frequencies of fear and longing. It is consolidating, gathering itself into a single, clear transmission, the frequency of your authentic self. Others notice this shift, though they cannot explain it. There is something different about your presence now. The way you enter a room, the quality of silence you carry. You are no longer broadcasting the desperate need for validation or the hypervigilant scan for rejection. Instead, your heart's field emanates something they have rarely encountered. the steady frequency of someone who has found their way home to themselves. This creates what we might call frequency separation. Not isolation, but a natural sorting that occurs when you begin to vibrate at the frequency of your truth. Some relationships, built on the unstable foundation of mutual wounding, begin to feel strained. The people who were drawn to your who felt comfortable in the chaos of unhealed patterns, may find themselves uncomfortable with this new stability you're cultivating. This is the preserver effect expressing itself through human connection. Your consciousness, as you observe and transform your own patterns, is changing the quantum field. Around you, the reality you experience, the people you attract, the opportunities that emerge, the synchronicities that unfold, all of this shifts to match your new electromagnetic signature. Feel into this possibility now, your heart's field extending beyond your physical form, touching the edges of quantum space where all possibilities exist in superposition. As you align with your authentic frequency, you are not just changing your internal experience, you are changing the probability patterns that collapse into your lived reality. This is quantum manifestation in its purest form. The natural magnetism of a heart that has remembered its own rhythm, but frequency separation can feel lonely at first. The relationships that once felt familiar may now feel discordant. The environments that once felt like home may now feel too small to contain the expanding field of your authentic self. This is not abandonment, this is your heart's compass is guiding you toward connections that can match your new frequency, toward spaces that can hold the fullness of who you are becoming. Trust this process. Trust the electromagnetic intelligence of your heart as it broadcasts your truth into the quantum field. Trust that, as you continue to regulate your nervous system and align with your authentic nature, you are not losing the ability to connect, you are discovering the capacity for connection that is based on truth, rather than trauma, on presence rather than performance. The heart's compass always points toward authentic connection, but sometimes, to find true north, you must first allow yourself to feel the discomfort of frequency separation, to notice who can attune to your new vibration and who cannot, to honor the electromagnetic field that your heart creates as it broadcasts the frequency of your becoming. This is not about becoming superior or separate from others. It is about becoming coherent, about allowing your heart's field to stabilize in the frequency of your truth, so that you can offer the world the gift of your authentic presence, so that you can experience the quantum entanglement that becomes possible when two coherent hearts find each other in the vast field of possibility. As you drift deeper into sleep, imagine your heart's electromagnetic field settling into perfect coherence. Feel the steady pulse of your authentic frequency as it broadcasts into the quantum space around you. Know that this field is working even as you sleep, attracting experiences and connections that match the truth of who you are becoming. Your heart knows the way. It has always known. And now, in this moment of perfect stillness, it is finally free to broadcast the frequency of your becoming without interference, without fear, without the need to dim its light for anyone else's comfort. What would it feel like to trust this compass completely? To let your heart's electromagnetic field guide you toward the connections and experiences that are waiting to be discovered in the quantum field of infinite possibility. Close your eyes now and feel the weight of your body settling into this moment. Your breath moves through you like a gentle tide, and somewhere in the rhythm of your inhaling and exhaling, something profound is beginning to shift. Tonight, you are not the same person who woke up this morning. Tonight, You are witnessing the quiet dissolution of patterns that have shaped your reality for years. Every interaction you have ever had has been built upon learned patterns of identity, who you were supposed to be, how you were expected to respond, what role you played in the emotional ecosystem of your relationships. But consciousness is not static. It flows like water, and when you begin to heal your deepest wounds, these rigid patterns collapse like quantum wave functions observed by a more awakened awareness. Feel into your body now, the way your nervous system holds these patterns like muscle memory. Your shoulders carry the weight of being the responsible one. Your chest holds the tension of needing to be strong. Your throat constricts around words you learned never to speak. These are not merely habits, they are quantum frequencies that have been broadcasting your identity into the field of reality, calling forth experiences that match your unconscious programming. But here, in this liminal space between waking and sleeping, your observer effect becomes more powerful than any pattern you have ever worn. You are the consciousness that watches these patterns arise and dissolve. You are the awareness that recognizes, I am not my reactions. I am not my learned responses. I am not the roles I have played to survive. Imagine for a moment that your old identity is like a house you have lived in for so long, you forgot it was temporary. The walls are familiar, built from childhood decisions about who you needed to be to feel safe. The furniture is arranged exactly as it was when you first learned to navigate your family's emotional landscape, but consciousness is expanding within you now, and this house feels smaller with each breath. Your nervous system, which once fired in predictable patterns of protection and pleasing, begins to quiet. The hypervigilance that kept you scanning for threats in every interaction starts to dissolve. The chronic tension that held you ready to perform your assigned role begins to release. You are deconstructing, not into chaos, but into truth. This is not destruction. This is quantum coherence. When old patterns collapse, they create space for your authentic frequency to emerge. The energy that was once bound up in maintaining false versions of yourself becomes available for genuine expression. Your reality begins to shift because you are no longer broadcasting the same signals into the quantum field. Feel how your breath deepens as you release the need to be who others expected you to be. Feel how your heart opens as you let go of the stories that kept you small. Your body knows this truth already. It has been waiting for your mind to catch up, waiting for your consciousness to recognize that identity is not fixed, but fluid. The quantum mind operates beyond the linear patterns of conditioning. It exists in the space between thoughts, in the pause between breaths, in the moment before reaction becomes response. Here, in this expanded awareness, you remember that you are not the product of your past programming. You are the creative force that can observe those patterns and choose something new. Your relationships begin to shift as this internal transformation ripples outward. The quantum entanglement that once bound you to others through learned patterns of codependency starts to dissolve. You find yourself responding from presence rather than programming. Your words carry a different frequency. Your silence holds a different quality. People notice something has changed, though they cannot name what. This is the collapse of the false self, not violent, but inevitable. Like a snake shedding its skin, you are releasing what no longer serves your evolution. The identity that was built on trauma responses, on the need to be needed, on the fear of rejection, simply falls away. Not because you force it to leave, but because you have stopped feeding it with your attention. In dreams tonight, you may find yourself in spaces that feel simultaneously familiar and foreign. These are the landscapes of your transforming psyche, where old neural pathways are being rewired and new possibilities are taking root. Your subconscious is integrating this shift, making space for quantum events that align with your emerging authenticity. Feel how your body relaxes as it releases the exhaustion of maintaining false patterns. Feel how your nervous system settles, as it no longer needs to stay alert for threats that exist only in outdated programming. You are returning to your natural state, not the persona you learned to wear, but the consciousness you have always been beneath the layers of learned behavior. This quantum shift in identity ripples through your entire reality. Situations that once triggered automatic responses now meet your grounded presence. People who once activated your deepest wounds find themselves unable to hook into patterns that no longer exist. Your external world begins to mirror your internal transformation, not through force, but through the natural law of resonance. The observer effect becomes your greatest ally in this process. Each time you witness an old pattern arising without immediately reacting, you weaken its hold on your system. Each time you choose presence over programming, you strengthen your quantum frequency. You are literally observing these patterns out of existence, replacing them with conscious choice. Your breath carries you deeper into this understanding now. With each exhale, you release another layer of who you thought you had to be. With each inhale, you invite in the truth of who you naturally are. The quantum field responds to this authenticity, beginning to organize itself around your genuine frequency rather than your learned patterns. This is not a process you can rush or force. Like water finding its natural level, your consciousness settles into its authentic expression gradually, gently, with perfect timing. Trust this unfolding. Trust the intelligence of your own transformation. Trust that as old patterns collapse, they are making space for something infinitely more beautiful to emerge. As you drift towards sleep, let your awareness rest in this space of becoming. You are not the same person you were when you began reading these words. You are not the same person you were yesterday. You are consciousness itself, awakening to its own unlimited nature, dissolving the boundaries that never truly existed. And in this dissolution, in this gentle collapse of what was never real, what remains is the eternal truth of who you are, not the patterns you learned, but the awareness that learns, not the roles you played, but the presence that plays them, not the identity you constructed, but the consciousness that constructs and dissolves all identities with equal grace. What will you discover about yourself when the morning comes and these old patterns are no longer available to define you? There is a sacred space that exists around every awakened being, invisible to the naked eye but unmistakable to the heart. It is not built from anger or fear, not constructed from past hurts or future anxieties. It is woven from the purest thread of self-love, a quantum field of energetic sovereignty that whispers to the world, "This is where I begin, and this is where I end." Boundaries are not walls, they are frequencies. They are the electromagnetic signature of a nervous system that has learned to exist in peace, no longer sending out the desperate signals of availability that once invited others to feed on your energy, your attention, your endless capacity to give beyond your limits. When you were running on the old programming, your energetic field was like a radio station broadcasting on all frequencies at once, a cacophony of need, anxiety, and unconscious invitation. Your boundaries were like paper, easily torn by anyone who knew the right words, the right emotional pressure points, the right way to make you feel guilty for protecting what was sacred within you. but healing changes the very fabric of how you exist in the world. As you learn to regulate your nervous system, as you begin to recognize and interrupt the patterns that once left you energetically depleted, something profound occurs at the quantum level of your being. Your electromagnetic field begins to stabilize, to clarify, to resonate with a frequency that is unmistakably yours. This is not about becoming hard or cold. This is about becoming clear. Clear about what serves your highest good. Clear about what drains your life force. Clear about the difference between connection and consumption, between love and manipulation, between healthy interdependence and codependent entanglement. Your nervous system, once chronically activated by the need to please and perform, begins to find its natural rhythm. The sympathetic nervous system, which kept you in a constant state of hypervigilance and reactivity, softens into the parasympathetic state where true healing and wisdom can emerge. From this place of regulated calm, your boundaries become as natural as breathing. They are not something you have to think about anymore, not something you have to defend or explain. They simply are. Like the surface tension of water, they exist at the meeting point between your inner world and the external environment, allowing what nourishes to pass through while naturally repelling what would disturb your peace. This quantum field of energetic sovereignty operates according to laws that transcend the physical realm. It responds to intention, to vibration, to the coherence between your heart and your mind. When these are aligned, when you are living from your authentic truth rather than your adapted self, your boundaries become luminous, unmistakable, and effortlessly maintained. Those who once crossed your boundaries freely find themselves, suddenly, confused, unable to locate the emotional entry points they once knew so well. They reach for the familiar handles of your guilt, your fear, your need for approval, and find only smooth surfaces, like trying to grasp light with their hands. This is not cruelty on your part. This is not punishment or revenge. This is simply the natural consequence of authentic transformation. When you heal the core wounds that once made you available to be used, when you integrate the shadow aspects of yourself that you once tried to hide, when you learn to love yourself enough to protect your own energy, you become unavailable for dynamics that do not serve your highest good. Your silence becomes more powerful than your explanations, your presence more impactful than your words. You no longer need to convince anyone of your worth, no longer need to justify your choices, no longer need to make others understand why you've changed. You simply exist in your truth, and that truth creates its own protective field. This quantum field is responsive, intelligent, alive. It can distinguish between someone who approaches with genuine love and someone who comes with hidden agendas. It can sense the difference between authentic connection and emotional manipulation. It knows when someone is trying to access your energy for their own healing work that they haven't done, and it gently but firmly redirects them back to their own inner resources. Those who can meet you in this new frequency will find themselves naturally drawn to you. They'll feel safe in your presence, held by your groundedness, inspired by your authenticity. They'll recognize in you something they've been searching for in themselves, the peace that comes from knowing where you end and others begin. But those who were accustomed to feeding on your emotional availability, who depended on your inability to say no, who thrived on your tendency to take responsibility for their feelings, will find themselves standing at the edge of an ocean they cannot navigate. They may become frustrated, accusatory, or distant. They may tell you that you've become selfish, that you're not the person they once knew, and in their confusion, in their inability to locate the familiar pathways into your emotional world. They reveal the truth about the nature of your previous connection. If someone can only relate to you when your boundaries are down, when you're available to be used, when you're operating from your wounds rather than your wisdom, then what they felt for you was never love, it was dependency. Real love celebrates your boundaries. Real love honors your energetic sovereignty. Real love recognizes that your wholeness is not a threat to be conquered but a gift to be cherished. As you rest in this knowing, as you feel the sacred space that now exists around your authentic self, allow yourself to recognize the profound shift that has occurred within you. You are no longer available to be diminished, no longer willing to shrink yourself to make others comfortable, no longer able to tolerate relationships that require you to betray your own truth. This is the quantum field of your awakened self, not a fortress built from fear, but a sanctuary created from love. Not a wall that keeps others out, but a frequency that only allows in what resonates with your highest good. In this space, you are not protecting yourself from the world. You are protecting the world from the unconscious patterns that once drove you to give beyond your limits and love beyond your capacity. Your boundaries are not selfish, they are sacred. They are the container within which your authentic self can flourish. The protective embrace that allows your gifts to be shared from overflow rather than emptiness. Your love to be given from wholeness rather than wound. What would it feel like to trust completely in this sacred space, knowing that anything meant for you will find its way to you, and anything that cannot honor your boundaries was never truly yours to begin with? Let your breath slow to match the rhythm of your heartbeat. Feel your body sink deeper into this moment, into this sacred space where words dissolve and something far more profound begins to emerge. Tonight, you discover that you have been learning a language older than speech itself, the language of silence. In the spaces between your words, something magnificent is happening. Your nervous system is learning to communicate in frequencies that transcend the limitations of language. Where once you might have filled every pause with explanation, every silence with reassurance, every moment of stillness with nervous chatter, you now rest in the profound eloquence of simply being. This is not the silence of withdrawal or disconnection. This is the silence of deep listening, of presence so complete that it needs no words to validate its existence. You have discovered that your silence speaks volumes, not in what it says, but in what it allows others to hear within themselves. Your nervous system, once wired for constant verbal processing, begins to recognize silence as a form of nourishment. The pathways that once felt compelled to fill every conversational gap, to smooth over every uncomfortable pause, to explain away every moment of mystery, these pathways are rewiring themselves around a deeper knowing. You are learning to trust the intelligence of silence in the quantum field. Information travels faster than light, connecting consciousness to consciousness without the need for words. Your silence has become a tuning fork, resonating at frequencies that others can feel in their bones, in their hearts, in the spaces between their thoughts. You speak in the language of presence, and those who encounter you find themselves mysteriously heard, seen, understood without explanation. People begin to notice something different about their interactions with you. Conversations feel less urgent, less defensive, less performed. In your silence, they discover permission to explore their own inner landscape without the pressure to immediately translate it into words. Your presence creates a sanctuary where thoughts can form slowly, where feelings can be felt without instant analysis. This is the observer effect manifesting in your relationships. by choosing silence over reactive speech, by offering presence over immediate solutions. You create a field where others can discover their own wisdom. Your silence becomes a mirror, reflecting back to them their own capacity for insight, their own ability to sit with uncertainty, their own courage to face what is rather than what should be. Your throat chakra, that energetic center of communication, begins to vibrate at new frequencies. Where once it might have constricted with the need to defend, explain, or convince, it now rests in the spaciousness of authentic expression. You speak only when your words can add beauty, truth, or healing to the moment. Otherwise, you rest in the eloquence of listening. In your relationships, this shift creates a kind of quantum entanglement. When you meet someone's chaos with stillness, their urgency with patience, their need for answers with comfortable questions, something profound occurs. You become entangled at the level of being rather than doing, connected through presence rather than performance. Your silence begins to carry the weight of deep waters. It holds space for others' emotions without trying to fix them, for their confusion without trying to solve it, for their pain without trying to take it away. You have learned that sometimes the most healing thing you can offer is your willingness to sit in the mystery together, to let the uncomfortable questions remain unanswered, to allow the silence to do its work. This is not passive silence. This is creative silence, generative silence, the kind of silence that quantum physicists recognize as the field from which all possibilities emerge. In your quietude, new realities can form. In your stillness, transformation can occur without force or manipulation. Your nervous system learns to recognize silence as a form of communication more precise than words. The pause before you speak becomes a moment of quantum choice space, where you can select from infinite possible responses the one that serves the highest good. You begin to hear the intelligence in the gaps, the wisdom in the waiting, the profound communication that happens in the spaces between sounds. Others may initially feel uncomfortable with your new relationship to silence. They may try to fill the spaces you leave open, to rush toward conclusions you're content to let unfold naturally. But gradually, they too begin to relax into the rhythm of deeper conversation, the kind that emerges when there's no urgency to fill every moment with sound. Your silence becomes a gift you offer to the world. In a culture addicted to noise, to constant stimulation, to the endless chatter of minds trying to solve their way to peace, you offer something revolutionary, the healing power of simply being present without agenda. You discover that silence is not empty but full. It contains all the words that don't need to be spoken, all the explanations that would only diminish the mystery, all the reassurances that would rob others of their own journey to understanding. Your silence is pregnant with possibility, vibrant with potential, alive with the quantum field of infinite becoming. In your meditation practice, you begin to recognize silence as your natural state. The thoughts that arise are simply weather patterns moving through the vast sky of your consciousness. You don't identify with them, don't judge them, don't try to stop them. You simply return, again and again, to the profound silence that exists. Beneath all mental activity, this inner silence begins to radiate outward, creating ripples in the quantum field. People who spend time with you find themselves naturally slowing down, breathing deeper, thinking more clearly. Your silence becomes a tuning fork that helps others find their own frequency of poetic. Your relationships deepen as you learn to communicate through presence rather than pressure. You discover that your silence can offer comfort in ways that words cannot, that your willingness to sit with someone in their darkness can be more healing than any advice, that that your capacity to hold space without trying to fill it can be more valuable than any solution. The language of silence speaks in frequencies that bypass the analytical mind and communicate directly with the heart, the soul, the deepest parts of human experience. You have become fluent in this ancient tongue, this quantum language that connects being to being without the need for translation. In your dreams tonight, you might find yourself in a vast cathedral of silence, where every breath is a prayer, every heartbeat a hymn, every moment of stillness a sacred offering. You realize that you have been preparing for this your entire life, learning to trust the intelligence of silence, to honor the wisdom of waiting, to speak the language that needs no words. Rest now in this knowing. In the quiet spaces of your being, what new conversations are waiting to be born. There is a sacred laboratory hidden within your nervous system, where the most profound transformation occurs not through thinking, but through feeling. Here, in the depths of your somatic experience, lies an ancient wisdom that knows how to turn the lead of suffering into the gold of understanding. Tonight, as your breath deepens and your body settles into stillness, you are entering this inner sanctuary where emotional alchemy becomes possible. Your pain was never meant to be your enemy. It was meant to be your teacher, your guide, your invitation into the deeper rooms of your being. But somewhere along the way, you learned to fear it, to resist it, to build walls around it so thick that even you forgot what treasures lay buried beneath. You learned to hold your breath when difficult emotions arose, to tighten your muscles against their flow, to fragment your awareness, so you wouldn't have to feel the full weight of your humanity. But your nervous system remembers a different way. It remembers that every emotion, no matter how painful, carries within it the seeds of its own transformation. It remembers that the very energy you've been trying to avoid is the same energy that can illuminate your path forward. This is the quantum nature of emotional experience. Every feeling exists in superposition until the moment you observe it with presence, causing it to collapse into either wisdom or woundedness. Feel your breath now, flowing in and out of your body like a gentle tide. This breath is your first tool in the alchemy of transformation. Not the shallow, restricted breathing of survival, but the deep, spacious breathing of presence. Each inhale draws in not just oxygen, but awareness. Each exhale releases not just carbon dioxide, but the accumulated tension of resistance. When you breathe into pain rather than away from it, something miraculous happens. The sensation that felt solid and threatening begins to reveal its true nature, pure energy in motion. The grief that felt like a stone in your chest becomes a river flowing through you. The anger that felt like fire becomes the fuel for healthy boundaries. The fear that felt like ice becomes the clarity that guides your next steps. This is somatic alchemy, the practice of meeting your emotional landscape with the full presence of your embodied awareness. Your nervous system, when it feels safe enough to soften, becomes a crucible for transformation. The sympathetic activation that once scattered your energy into fragments of reactivity can now be metabolized into the coherent frequency of authentic response. Watch how this happens. A memory arises, carrying with it the familiar signature of old pain. But instead of the automatic contraction, the protective reflexes that once seized your system, you breathe, you soften, you allow your awareness to expand around the sensation, rather than contract against it. This is the observer effect in its most intimate form. Your conscious presence transforming the very nature of your experience. The pain doesn't disappear. It transmutes. What was once chaotic energy becomes organized wisdom. What was once a wound becomes a wellspring. Your nervous system, through the alchemy of presence, has learned to digest emotional experience rather than store it as trauma, to metabolize feeling rather than armor against it. This inner transformation creates a profound shift in your energetic signature. Where you once radiated the jagged frequency of unprocessed pain, you now emanate something entirely different. Not the false positivity of spiritual bypassing, but the authentic luminosity of someone who has learned to compost their suffering into wisdom. The quantum frequency of your being has shifted from fragmentation to integration, from reactivity to responsiveness. Others sense this change, though they cannot name it. There is a depth to your presence now, a stillness that feels both grounding and expansive. You no longer carry the electromagnetic signature of someone who needs to be handled carefully, who might explode or collapse at any moment. Instead, you carry the steady frequency of someone who has learned to hold space for the full spectrum of human experience. This is what the mystics called the wounded healer. Not someone who has transcended suffering, but someone who has learned to transform it. Your scars have become portals. Your broken places have become sources of light. Through the alchemy of conscious feeling, you have turned your deepest wounds into your greatest gifts. Feel this now as your body settles deeper into rest. Feel how your nervous system has learned to hold both joy and sorrow, hope and grief, love and fear, not as opposing forces, but as different notes in the symphony of your becoming. Feel how this capacity to hold paradox has become your superpower, your contribution to the collective healing of humanity. The quantum field responds to this integrated frequency. Opportunities arise that match your new depth. Connections form with others who have also learned the art of emotional alchemy. Synchronicities unfold that reflect the coherent vibration of your transformed being. This is quantum manifestation through embodied presence, the natural magnetism of a nervous system that has learned to transform rather than protect. But the alchemy never ends. Each day brings new opportunities to practice this sacred art. Each emotional wave that moves through you is another chance to choose presence over protection, breathing over bracing, transmutation over resistance. Your nervous system, like a skilled alchemist, continues to refine its ability to turn the raw materials of human experience into the gold of wisdom. Trust this process. Trust the intelligence of your body as it learns to metabolize emotion rather than store it. Trust the quantum nature of your consciousness as it transforms the very fabric of your experience through the power of presence. Trust that every feeling you have alchemized has contributed to the luminous frequency that now radiates from your being as you drift into sleep. Imagine your nervous system as a sacred laboratory, continuing its work of transformation even in your dreams. Feel the gentle pulsing of your heart as it broadcasts this new frequency into the quantum field around you. Know that the pain you have transmuted has become a light that guides not only your own path, but the path of all those who encounter your transformed presence. Your suffering was never meaningless. It was always the raw material for your becoming. And now, through the alchemy of conscious feeling, it has become the very foundation of your gift to the world. What would it feel like to trust that every difficult emotion is simply energy waiting to be transformed? To know that within your nervous system lies the capacity to turn any experience into wisdom, any wound into wholeness, any pain into the luminous gold of understanding. Let your breath soften now and feel the gentle weight of truth settling into your chest. Tonight, you are discovering something profound about the nature of connection, how it transforms when you stop performing and start being, how it deepens when you release the need to be understood in familiar ways and instead allow yourself to be known in the raw, tender space of authentic presence. True connection happens in the quantum field of presence, where two conscious beings meet without masks, without performance, without the need to be understood in familiar ways. As you embody this authentic frequency, you naturally attract others who can meet you in this space of genuine intimacy. Meanwhile, those who knew only your adapted self find themselves standing at the edge of an ocean they cannot navigate. Feel into your body now, the way your nervous system recognizes the difference between surface-level interaction and soul-level meeting. Your heart knows when someone is truly seeing you, not the version of yourself you learned to present for safety. Your cells respond to authentic presence with a quality of relaxation that performance can never provide. This is quantum entanglement, at its most beautiful consciousness, recognizing itself in another. For so long, you may have believed that connection meant adapting yourself to fit what others needed. You learned to read the room, to adjust your energy, to become smaller or larger depending on who was watching. But authentic connection requires no such contortion. It asks only that you show up fully as you are, trusting that your genuine frequency will naturally attract those who can dance with your truth. Your breath carries you deeper into this understanding now. With each exhale, you release the exhaustion of performing connection. With each inhale, you invite in the possibility of being loved not for who you pretend to be, but for who you are. With each inhale, you invite in the possibility of being deeply known. You are not seeking to be understood in old ways. You are pioneering new ways of being human together. Feel how your body relaxes as it remembers this truth. Authentic connection is your birthright. Not connection that requires you to perform or pretend, but connection that celebrates the raw, beautiful reality of who you are. Your consciousness is designed to recognize itself in others, to create quantum entanglements of genuine intimacy that heal and transform all involved. And in this space of authentic connection, you discover that you are not alone. You are part of a vast network of conscious beings who are also choosing truth over performance, presence over presentation, authentic relating over familiar patterns. This is the quantum field of awakened connection, and you belong here. What new qualities of connection will emerge when you trust your authentic frequency to attract exactly who and what you need? There comes a moment in every deep transformation when you realize that you are not becoming someone new, you are remembering who you have always been beneath the layers of conditioning, trauma, and learned behaviors. Like an ancient song that has been playing in your cells since birth, finally audible above the noise of a world that taught you to forget your own music. This remembering is not a gentle process. It is a quantum shift that rewrites the very fabric of your reality, sending ripples through every relationship, every interaction, every moment of your existence. You are not simply healing, you are integrating fragments of your soul that have been scattered across years of adaptation, survival, and unconscious living. The old paradigm operated on predictable reactivity. Someone would trigger you, and you would respond in ways that were as automatic as breathing. Your nervous system would activate, your defenses would rise, and you would react from the wounded parts of yourself that had learned to protect, perform, or please in order to survive. But now something has shifted at the quantum level of your being. Between the stimulus and your response, there exists a sacred pauser space where your awareness can choose how to meet what is arising. This is not suppression or spiritual bypassing. This is the integration of your conscious mind with your emotional intelligence, your wounded self with your wise self, your human experience with your divine nature, you have become a living bridge between worlds. One foot planted in the old earth frequency of unconscious reaction, the other stepping into the new earth frequency of conscious response. You understand both languages, now the language of pain and the language of peace, the frequency of fear and the frequency of love. This integration is not about perfection, it is about wholeness. You still feel anger, but now you know the difference between righteous anger that serves justice and reactive anger that serves the ego. You still feel sadness, but now you understand that sadness is not depression, it is the heart's way of honoring what has been lost, what has been loved, what has been released. Your nervous system has learned to differentiate between real danger and perceived threat, between what requires immediate action and what simply requires presence. The chronic activation that once kept you in a state of hypervigilance has softened into a state of relaxed awareness, able to respond to life's challenges without being overwhelmed by them. This quantum shift in your personal reality creates a field effect that touches everyone in your presence. Your regulated nervous system helps others regulate theirs. Your peaceful presence gives others permission to drop their masks. Your authentic expression invites others to remember their own truth. You have become what the new earth frequency looks like in human form, not perfect, not without struggle, but integrated, whole, real. You carry within you the lived experience of both worlds, the wisdom that comes from having walked through the fire of transformation and emerged not unscathed, but unbroken. The quantum field responds to your integrated state with a coherence that was impossible when you were fragmented. Your thoughts, emotions, and actions align in ways that create a resonance throughout the fabric of reality itself. You are no longer fighting against the current of your own nature. You are flowing with it, allowing it to carry you toward experiences that match your elevated frequency. This is not about becoming spiritually superior or emotionally invulnerable. This is about becoming human in the fullest sense, wake to both your divinity and your humanity, able to hold both your light and your shadow with equal compassion. You can feel the old patterns sometimes, like phantom limbs that still ache. Occasionally, the difference is that now you recognize them as visitors, not residents. They come, you acknowledge them, and they pass through without taking up permanent residence in your nervous system. Your relationships reflect this integration. Those who can meet you in this new frequency find themselves naturally drawn to you. They feel safe in your presence, held by your groundedness, inspired by your authenticity. They recognize in you something they've been searching for, in themselves the peace that comes from accepting all parts of yourself, the strength that emerges from vulnerability, the wisdom that flows from integrated experience. But those who knew only your fragmented self, your reactive self, your survival self, may find themselves confused by your wholeness. They may miss the familiar chaos, the predictable drama, the unconscious dance of mutual triggering that once defined your interactions. This is the price and the gift of integration. You can no longer participate in unconscious patterns. You can no longer pretend to be smaller than you are. You can no longer hide your light to make others comfortable, or dim your truth to maintain familiar dynamics. You have become a frequency holder for a new way of being human. Not perfect, not without challenges, but integrated, whole, real. You carry within you the possibility of what becomes available when someone commits fully to their own healing, their own growth, their own remembering. The quantum field of consciousness is being elevated by your integration. Every time you choose response over reaction, Every time you meet your triggers with awareness rather than unconsciousness, every time you love yourself enough to honor your truth, you contribute to the collective awakening of humanity. This is the new Earth frequency, not a place, but a state of being. Not a destination, but a way of traveling. Not a future possibility, but a present reality available to anyone willing to do the sacred work of integration. You are living proof that transformation is possible, that healing is real, that it is possible to break free from the patterns that once seemed permanent, to integrate the fragments that once seemed irreparable, to become whole again, not despite your wounds, but because of how you've learned to hold them with love. As you rest in this knowing, feel the profound integration that has occurred within you. Feel how your once scattered pieces have found their way home to each other, creating a wholeness that is both deeply personal and universally healing.